the baseline is shifting, or at least the baseline is becoming this new question. Right? Where do you go after an interview? You probably, oftentimes, go and then look the person up online. So you're checking, your reality checking, arguably, oftentimes occurs in the online environment instead of on the ground. Yeah? I just want to give you an example of this. I came up with this term, online groundedness, when I read a study that was done by some investigative reporters at a newspaper in the Netherlands called the NRC Handelsblad. And what the reporters did, well, what their research question was is the Netherlands as a culture, is it hardening? That is to say, is there more hate? And they operationalized this question by looking at two kinds of actors, the right-wing actors and the extremist right-wing actors. And they were interested in whether or not the language of the right was increasingly becoming similar to the language of the extremists. Now, in order to find out the answer to this, what they didn't do was what we would normally do. That is, they did not embed, they didn't go native, they didn't embed a researcher in hate groups. They didn't survey them, although that would be quite difficult. They didn't interview them. They didn't go to the Social History Institute that collects all ephemera, that collects pamphlets about different kinds of subcultures. No, they went to the Internet Archive. They went to the Internet Archive, yeah? And they looked up the sites, and here's the still rigorous data sets. They looked up the 150 websites of right-wing and extremist right-wing groups, and they read them. And they checked whether or not the language of the right-wing groups was becoming similar to the extremist groups. That is, that the right-wing groups were hardening, and they made that finding. Now, they grounded the claim online. Yeah? So they grounded the idea that that Dutch culture is hardening through looking at websites. Now, I would like to introduce to you today the basic distinction between what I have been describing as virtual methods and what I'm increasingly talking about in terms of digital methods. Now, with virtual methods, what normally happens is that there's a particular method that has a very long tradition, and that it becomes digitized. Now, there are a number of issues when one tries to digitize a method, and these issues have to do with whether or not one takes into account what you could call medium specificity. That is to say, do the methods actually take into account digital culture? I'm put up before you a number of digitized methods, if you will, online surveys, online interviews, kind of online, I'm going to have it between brackets, observation practices, online samples, online investigative reporting. And each of these has a set of issues that I believe have not been properly thought through when moving the methods to the new medium. To give you a couple of examples, oftentimes I'm asked how to find the set of actors in order to send a survey to. And what researchers often do in virtual methods, in the social sciences, when moving to internet research, is they make their survey, as one would normally make a survey, in SurveyMonkey, for example. Yeah? And they don't use the pro version, they use the free one, which is fine. But of course, that's also an issue. Yeah? Do I use the pro or do I use the free one? And then what they do is they send the link to where, is the question. Oftentimes they send it to a discussion list. Yeah? There's a particular discussion list that's dedicated to a particular topic. you know, some sort of narrow issue, and they send it there. What they oftentimes don't do, and also what's often not immediately knowable, is to know who subscribes to that discussion list, how many subscribers there are, how active is it, etc. How open is it to these sorts of URLs being sent to it? These sorts of questions. Now that's one example. Yeah, and there's a particular sensitivity to the medium that's oftentimes missing. How long should this survey be when it's online? Is there any difference? I learned from a particular non-governmental organization, APC, that if you're dealing with NGOs and you're surveying them, the survey cannot be longer than 7 minutes. It cannot. These are these little, whether it's tacit knowledge, etc., but what that knowledge is knowledge that's sensitive to the medium. Anyway, there are a series of different issues. Online interviews. I mean, of course, we can do them by Skype nowadays. I mean, oftentimes, what we've done, in fact, were email exchanges, and we called it an interview. What's different about an email exchange and a regular interview, etc. But one thing that I would like to bring up in particular is and this was what was so fascinating about the presentation that we just heard in the other room, is one of the great difficulties with internet-related research is the perception of dirty data, the perception of incompleteness, the issue of not having exhaustive data sets, yeah? The idea that you need to have a complete data set, like the researchers now at Northwestern University and elsewhere that have 50 terabytes of Second Life, all of Linden Lab's data. And you can't even start, for some researchers, you can't even start to study Second Life unless you have the entire data set. So then you get into these issues of negotiated access, commercial data sets, etc. Yeah, and you also get into the issue of competition between who has the biggest data set. Call it data set envy. You'll see this quite a lot. Oh, mine's 50 terabytes. How big is yours? Can you get access to EverQuest, etc. Yeah, and most other internet research can't get the complete data set for one reason or another. First of all, they can't handle it. Yeah, they can't download it, 50 terabytes, etc. I mean, it's very difficult to handle those sizes. So what they often do is just send this link to a discussion list. So arguably, what they're doing is the methods are fallowing. So a lot of the perception of the dirtiness of the data sets, the incompleteness, etc., has to do with, I would argue, not having the sensitivity for digital culture. Okay, this is not fair. This is a picture of an internet cafe in Cuba, and this is in fact the censor. But what I want to highlight with this particular slide is how a lot of internet research kind of looks like, sort of over the shoulder. Yeah? And what I am proposing is that the internet research actually moves sort of behind the screen, yeah, to the data sets and how they're generated. And I'll get into that a little bit now. Digital methods, what is it as a research practice? How is it different from digitized methods? Arguably, it has a particular protocol. And what it strives to do, generally speaking, is follow the medium. Yeah? Follow the medium. Which objects are available? Yeah? So it looks at natively digital objects, links, tags, threads, robots.txt, archived websites, timestamps, tiny URLs. The list can go on and on. These particular objects, yeah? And then it looks at how the dominant devices of the medium handle them. How does Google handle hyperlinks? How does Technorati handle at times.